Hey everyone, some updated numbers are in for the Panama City Beach and 30-day real estate markets. Today is April 6th, 2020, Monday. I'm Craig Duran with the Duran Group over at Berkshire Hathaway Home Services. Again, this is home office edition for these real estate updates. A couple things we're keeping track of. Remember, we want to look at the numbers to understand where we are in the market. What we're looking at here again is from a company called Showing Time. Showing Time is a system that a lot of real estate offices and agents use across the country to schedule an actual showing appointment. This graph is from the state of Florida. The blue line represents 2019. The orange line is 2020, showing us year over year how many showings were actually happening. Because, of course, if we can track, if we see how many showings are happening, we're going to get a sense of how many contracts are being written, how many closings we're going to have. We can see that there was a pretty dramatic fall off from about March 12th through March 26th. That was when the biggest move in the decline of showings year over year happened. For me, what's encouraging here is that in the last 7 or 10 days, we haven't fallen off as much. We've fallen off a little, but it looks like maybe we're coming to a point of what the new normal is going to look like for our level activity, at least for the next little while. Let's look at some local specific numbers to see if that's playing out the same way. On the 30A market, 3 weeks ago, we wrote 38 contracts. We wrote 11 2 weeks ago. We wrote 9 last week. Don't worry too much about the percentages. I think the percentages are important to keep in mind generally year over year. But remember, we're also comparing a week at a time and a week at a time. And we might have one busy week last year and then a soft week another year. And if you're comparing it exactly the same, the trend's going to bounce around a little bit. You'll see what I'm talking about in a second. But I think what's encouraging here, and it lines up with our showing graph. Look, we wrote 38 contracts 3 weeks ago. 2 weeks ago, yes, we dropped to 11. We wrote 9 more last week. So maybe we are around that point of flattening out a little bit with activity. This is the Panama City Beach condo market. 3 weeks ago, we wrote 39 contracts. We dropped off to 19. But last week, 17, still on pace for about the same as the previous week. When you look at the Panama City Beach homes market, we wrote 23 contracts 3 weeks ago. We wrote 17 contracts 2 weeks ago, and we wrote 15 contracts this last week. So a couple of encouraging things to take away here. There are still contracts being written. There are still closings happening. The real estate agents, the stronger agents that are in the market, especially the experienced ones, are very used to some of working through what we're dealing with now with social distancing ideas. Any of us that have been selling real estate in Florida for any amount of time are very used to working with a buyer that wants to see something that hasn't quite come to the area yet. Plenty of times we've walked into a condo or 2 or 5 for someone who's in Atlanta who just hasn't come down yet and wants us to take a couple of videos for them, wants us to FaceTime with them. That's a very, very common thing. When we're selling, there's plenty of times that the seller's not even here. And so our original appointment might be just like this, online on Skype or FaceTime or just on the phone. So those things are still happening. That's not a big change for us. We are very used to now. In fact, anybody watching this has probably signed a document electronically at some point. We're doing the same thing with real estate listing agreements. We're doing the same thing with real estate contracts. Closings are still happening. Plenty of closing offices. I'd be interested to see the ratio, because I know when I have closings, probably 2 out of 10 closings, the buyer or the seller is actually in town. So many of our closings have people who are buying from another area or selling from another area, and they're signing their documents in another area. We're very used to this. Title companies, closing companies are used to this. Buyers are used to working with banks and submitting them all of their things for loan applications virtually and online. So there's not an actual ton of dramatic change to our real estate process and how we can do things. But just know going forward, there are agents out there. We're doing it. The strong agents in the market are doing it. If you need to go and see something, I'm sure plenty of them, we're doing it. We'll meet you out there by appointment. If you want to preview some things directly with someone, FaceTime, hey, we'll run and look at 2 or 3 houses for you. We can FaceTime with you at each one. That's a service I see some agents providing. We do the same thing. We'll shoot videos for you. Happy to meet with you virtually and answer any questions that you might have about the process. That's all still going on. Real estate agents in Florida are very used to that. But again, I think the most encouraging thing to take from the data here, and I know it's a very short amount of time, but in the last 2 weeks, we've had about the same level of activity. So buying, pro tips for buyers right now, obviously, if you're making an offer, test a seller's motivation. Test and see if they're reacting at all to what's going on in the market. It's the smart thing to do. If you're selling and you haven't put your property up for sale yet because it's not the right time, consider taking advantage of the coming soon status that we have now. It's a really nice way to test the market, put something out for sale that's not quite available. It's a good way to test maybe a little higher price than you might normally do when you're ready to roll it out in full. So there's a couple of ideas, a couple of updates from us. We'll be back a little bit later this week just to see how this week's going. So far, I can tell you just with how Monday has started, it's only 11:43 in the morning, that it may actually be a little bit busier week. At least that's the way Monday started so far. So I hope you guys are staying well. Be safe in all of this. If you have any questions at any time, reach out to us, and we're happy to help.